you are. I know there are a few of you out there. Thank you for hanging out with me all these years since February 2017. We're still here. I just wanted to share a few random musings. Last night, Wednesday, the 8th of March, 2023, I enjoyed a wonderful private hangout on my personal Zoom Pro, which allowed some of our long-term community to share some wonderful, intimate moments, period. It was like sitting around a campfire, telling stories of courage and stories of loss and pain and suffering. And I think it was mutually beneficial for everyone involved. I'd like to keep this going, perhaps on a weekly basis. Another thing I want to share is that I'm learning very gently, slowly, in kind of a clumsy way, how to migrate my energy towards a new platform called Rumble. I'm basically giving up on YouTube in terms of having any kind of useful, relevant, healthy, vigorous, truthful dialogue. It's not possible. So I'm going to migrate to Rumble. Also, I'm not expecting any monetization anymore from YouTube, so I don't even bother. So I am at the mercy of having to either go out begging for donations or just doing this on a volunteer basis and hoping that something else happens in my life which generates a bit of revenue. I recall some of my glory days from years ago where I used to be able to pay my rent and go traveling long distance from the revenue on my channel, and I felt very valued and appreciated. And I did provide vast amounts of recordings and readings and astrology for the viewers. That chapter is now gone. There are plenty of other channels on YouTube that provide that now, but I don't really see myself doing that anymore. And I apologize. It's other people can do it. Hello, Necessary Truth. I see you there in the live chat. All right. It's very interesting. Up in this recent full moon, I received a lot of emails and communications from friends and family and community here at Terra Illumination. And I realized that in some ways I go around with a little bit of a blinkered attitude. Again, this is part of my natural nature anyway. I'm very dominant with the fixed signs in terms of astrology. So it's hard for me to like peel away sometimes and allow for a broader, more varied type of exchange of information, ideas, and beliefs. I'm pretty fixated in a certain way, and I've discovered that, and I don't really want to apologize for it. Hello, Path Traveler. This little video is not monetized, okay? I don't have a particular story that I'm going to try and convey. I just wanted to share some of my feelings. What I noticed last night on our private Zoom session is that those of us who were there have really had a long history together, and we've actually been very supportive to each other in our own very unique ways. And this is despite the fact that we are separated by vast distances. Some of us have never even met each other in person, and yet we have effectively the same quality of engagement. One of the things I'm noticing is that to me it's fresh air. And of course, I can relate it to the astrology, like the Pisces new moon and the recent full moon with the moon in Virgo, sun in Pisces. And weeks before this particular episode, I was predicting how a lot of the sludge, the sewage regarding Washington, D.C. Would start flooding out like a dam that's broken, and they wouldn't be able to stop it. And so the Virgo issue is like, well, what are we going to do about it? What is the cleanup campaign? What does that look like? And it's starting to happen right now. So the cleanup campaign is really about sanitation. And as they say, the sun is one of the greatest cleaners. And like the obvious example right now in America, for the American population, is the revelation of the recordings taken a few years ago regarding a very heavily publicized event regarding voting events. And there was the story that was presented by certain parts of American politicians and political parties on one side, and then there was the other side of the story. And now, with the recent revelations of all the documents and the videotapes, the other side of the story, which belongs to the population to whom I particularly relate, it's put the, let's say, the disseminators of lies, deception, betrayal, propaganda, it's put them in a very difficult position because it's hard for them to suppress this material anymore. It's being released to the public in segments through a kind of very popular, sometimes controversial news anchor who has so far got sole access to the full amount of footage. And as it gets released, it becomes very obvious that the American people were heavily deceived and betrayed over long periods of time. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in terms of whether anything will come of this or whether anybody of these evil perpetrators will be held accountable. But at least we're getting a sniff at possible, getting things back in balance and harmony. So that's very refreshing to me. Some of the other things that I've noticed are extremely disturbing in terms of violence that is exploding all across the United States. It's astronomical, and some of the most disturbing stuff that I've seen is women becoming very violent on anyone and anybody that they choose for that particular moment of attack, assault, crime, or whatever it is. And a lot of this is being captured on media, like your TikToks, your Twitters, your Telegrams, your WeChats, Weibos, and all of those things. And once they are out there in the public, it's very hard to pull them back in. I don't think there's many of these criminals and thugs that are being held accountable because right now inside of America, many of the, let's say, judges and people who are supposed to represent the law and who are supposed to hold criminals accountable, they have been either disempowered or perhaps replaced by other so-called judges to basically, it's like a sort of a catch and release thing. So basically, we all know this, crime is exploding in this country and there's no accountability. And it's the same thing with issues on the south, where the United States connects with Mexico, and also in the north now where Canada is connecting to the United States. We've got a lot of problems there. And then, of course, we've got the issue of these so-called cartels that deal in drugs all over the United States. And the way I see it, it's all an inevitable consequence of the people at the very, very top of the pyramid of power willfully choosing and making decisions that will obviously ultimately translate into really bad outcomes for we the people in the United States of America. But the people at the top don't really care about those outcomes for we the people, because they have a completely different agenda, which has nothing to do with the things that I'm interested in, which is restoring and reclaiming our sovereign selves, our so-called freedom. Now, the thing is, freedom is not cheap, freedom is not easy, and freedom, is, almost by definition, will be taken from you unless you deliberately protect it. Because there are people who benefit by destroying your freedom. It's happening on a global scale. We all know this. And as the mainstream media are discovering, it's harder and harder and harder to suppress and deny and distract from the bigger narrative, which is now including free speech, open dialogue, and it's spreading to a parallel world, parallel platforms where people like myself can speak freely and openly with much less chance of censorship. So that's basically what I'm doing. I'm saying goodbye to the mainstream world, and I am migrating very gently to an amorphous new parallel world, which is existing on certain platforms that have a higher degree of respect for truth, honesty, freedom of speech, the American Constitution. So I'm going to be gently becoming more active on a platform called Truth Social, another one called Twitter, and another one called Rumble. In the meantime, I'm going to keep the YouTube going because there are people who still watch my channel there, and I can use it as a way to notify people and share stories and help people understand that there is a parallel world forming. And that's because people in America and across the world are realizing that we are descending into a very polarized situation. You can look at the Pluto and Aquarius agenda. You can, especially that agenda, where everything is going to be brutally polarized in terms of freedom versus tyranny. And you have to make a choice. If you do not make a conscious, deliberate choice, the choices will be made for you. And the most likely chance is that you will end up being a victim of the tyranny. So if you do not make deliberate, conscious choices to choose freedom and everything that requires to migrate into a world of greater freedom, greater sovereign self, rule of law, truth, honesty, and I would say a healthier environment, you have to understand it's probably going to come at some personal cost, perhaps extreme personal cost. For example, if we, let's say, become very so-called nationalistic and we close down our borders, north and south, and we heavily restrict economic trade with places like China and Mexico, and places where we have enjoyed and exploited other economies, other populations, to the benefit of the American consumer. In other words, we still enjoy things like very cheap toothbrushes, cheap electronics, cheap clothing, and so on and so on. If we go back to a more self-contained environment, the chances are the cost and the price of everything is going to go up and up and up and up. Energy prices will probably go down, down, and down, and down. But when we go back into a culture where we start manufacturing much more of everything that we need and use ourselves, then the price will inevitably go up. Because when they make a power drill that you can buy in Home Depot for $50 or $100 or $200, it's made in China for a cost of $5, $10 or so. And it's exported over here, and there's all sorts of profits and markups that go with it. And you, the consumer, pay that price. And the profits go to the big people, the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, the Fidelities, the State Streets, all of the massive people who are concerned about profit. We're talking about the multinationals. It doesn't go to you. You're not the one who benefits. You benefit because of the low price. But remember, there was a time in America, I remember some of it when I was a kid, where we did everything here. We made everything here. We used our ingenuity, our imaginations, our can-do mentality, our pioneering skills to do everything and make everything here. We gave it all away. That all started back with the NAFTA agreements under Bill Clinton. 40 years ago was the beginning of the end for the United States, and we are now at the very terminal point. Pluto is in 29.5 degrees right now, and it's going to transition. It's the death of an old paradigm. The Pluto in Capricorn era is officially dead, dying, and over. The people at the top who benefited from the Pluto and Capricorn era are going to be left behind and pushed aside as the Pluto in Aquarius theme begins to dominate, where we the people will reconstitute ourselves as a population and a community, as opposed to a bunch of debt cows on a debt farm owned and operated by a bunch of thugs and tyrants and criminals. Okay? I've tried to speak out openly here in ways that will not trigger any kind of backlash from the algorithm, but I've also demonetized this video, which will decrease the chances of any kind of deletion or backlash. So if this video does stay up for a while, I hope you get something out of it. I will keep you posted about anything new that I have to put up, and it'll end up on Rumble or Twitter or Truth Social. Okie dokes. Thank you all for hanging out with me and listening to my rants. I wish you all a blessed day. Be loving, be loved. Oh, Path, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Americans have been diabolical in, propagating our what's called hegemony across the world. America has effectively created a lot of damage alongside with so-called benefits. That era is coming to an end. It's collapsing. It is falling apart. We're looking at global restructuring. Okay, the momentum started in January 2020. The full restructuring will be completed in about 2044. So we have about a 20-year journey ahead of us in the United States where there's going to be radical upheaval. Dramatic, profound, highly unstable, radical upheaval as the cry for freedom becomes very, very loud. Make a decision. Choose which side you want to belong to, and then stick to your decisions. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye. I'm going to sign out now. I have to close this video down. Let's see. Yes, I want to stop the video streaming. Okay, bye-bye.